So Stellantis' solution for poor sales is go upscale and increase prices. Shaking my head. Yeah, today we're going to talk a little question and answer, and thanks Chris for that question. And as well, welcome back, my savory seeds of sunshine. And let's talk a little Q&A today. You've got a lot of questions to ask, and I've got some answers for you. So yes, to Chris's question about what is going on with Stellantis jacking up prices, trying to pretend that they're an upscale brand. Clearly, they've advertised that for some time. And I've heard from the CEOs say that very decisively that they're trying to cater to more of the luxury car segment. And as a result, they're trying to push prices to follow in line with that. But if any of you have actually followed and actually looked at these cars in close proximity, then you could probably recognize that a vehicle like a Jeep Grand Cherokee or a Wagoneer or Wagoneer S do not hold a candle to vehicles in the luxury car segment. For example, Jaguar Land Rover, maybe not most reliable, but certainly the feel and the luxury element doesn't hold a candle to what we're seeing in the European scales, as well as the German products. Of course, Mercedes-Benz, try a BMW X5, try any of those brands, and it's pretty quick, and it paints a pretty quick picture as to who's really the luxury brand and who's not. Jeep, they still cut corners, their products still aren't that great a quality, and quite frankly, you can fool one person one of the times, but you certainly can't fool me. And you know what? To be honest with you, that's part of the problem. With this increase in the prices over the last 5 years, they've actually seen an indirect relationship to numbers of sales. In other words, more price, lower sales. And this has literally been a phenomenon in the last 5 years. So not sure what they're thinking. Stick with what they know. Go off-roading. Create that best off-roading brand. Bring a little reliability to the game, because Stellantis, I think you're dipping your toes in the wrong pool. Next question, Brad is actually asking, who of the big three creates the best V8 engine? Well, let's say, for example, in 2024, Ford, really they're talking turbo V6s, EcoBoost engines. So you pretty much count Ford out of the race. I mean, Toyota's got that V6 now too, but they're not the primary three that you're talking about, so they're out of the race. So what does that leave us? That leaves us Ram, and that leaves us Chevy or GM or GMC. Well, in my personal opinion, what I've seen, Ram has a lot of problems. Long idle time is leading to a lot of low pressure conditions, premature wear and tear on the upper end of the engine. Obviously, the engines, if they're idling a lot, they just don't seem to hold up. They develop a tick, a knock, timing chain issues with a lot of those vehicles. And the older V8 engines from Ram and Dodge were the best, the 318, the 360 from many years ago. The problem is then they started the evolution going to the 4.7s, the 5.7 Hemis, which create a little more power, but the reliability isn't quite there. Then Chevy GM, we know there's no secret about their lifters and rockers breaking, and then the warranties covering part of the repairs, maybe replacing the bank, fixing part of the rockers, and maybe not the entire engine. So it's definitely left a little sour taste, but quite frankly, I do believe GM has probably some of the best engines right now, fundamentally a better engine than what we're seeing over in the Ram campus, and nobody else really has competition to that. So if you're going down that route, my personal opinion, I would probably go, if you're going ICE gas, I would go with the GM or the GMC or Chevy. I liked personally the 6.2, although there's been some hard start conditions with some of those vehicles, and the 5.3s are problematic because of the reduced fuel consumption and the cylinder cutoff or deactivation. So take your pick. It's the lesser of two evils, but honestly, they all have their Achilles. So I would go with the Chevy, in my opinion. So Leah Drozia asks a question, do they scrape the rust off these frames of these vehicles if they've been sitting so long? We know that there's the whole conversation about lot rot. A lot of these vehicles have been sitting. I mean, we're starting to see, because of what's going on in the increased price of a lot of these vehicles, particularly in the Jeeps and the Rams, there's a lot of lot rot going on. So in other words, vehicles just sitting. I've seen 2022 model years out there. 2023s, there's a mass abundance. And as we roll into 25, you're going to see lots more vehicles that are going to be a year, 2, maybe 3 years old, sitting on the lot that have never been purchased because of their high prices, maybe the wrong spec, too much inventory in general, and a lot of these vehicles are just sitting. So do they scrape the rust off? Generally, probably not, but they likely will go through it. And I've seen some pretty shady practices out there, more so in the used car sector, where they'll do a quick undercoating and it looks fresh and shiny and black underneath. But that's not a great practice. And that's all the more reason not to get the extras. Undercoating is a great way to hide some of those gems. But generally speaking, it's not just the rust on the chassis or the frame or the undercarriage because of time and the sun. Of course, splashing. A lot of these sit on gravel pads and the gravel splashes underneath and you get that corrosion because it's a corrosive texture in sand and gravel. And all of this just does not bode well for a vehicle that sits. We can't forget about batteries. You know, when you look on a battery, there's an actual date and there's a proration date. Even if you buy a new battery, every year that goes down, they'll only give you so much value towards that battery if it fails as a warranty. Because they know batteries have a limited shelf life. Batteries will deteriorate with time. And so they're not good forever. And so a lot of these dealers that are holding on these vehicles for a long time are not doing them any service, nor are they doing you any service. If you're the person coming along and it's already got 2 years under the belt, maybe 3 years, remember, if it's a 2023, it was likely built in somewhere in the mid of 22 because they usually build it the year before. So that's definitely a conversation that a lot of people need to have with themselves, thinking about, do I buy that last year's model? There could be some great deals, but not just the batteries deteriorating. You already lost a year, 2, 3 years of use out of that battery. Most batteries are only good for 5 years these days with all the added electronics and technology. There's a constant draw. Even the best of the best, the Toyotas and the Lexus vehicles, leave them too long and they will die. You pretty much need to keep a tender on anything sitting for more than a couple of weeks. And on top of that, tires, they start to flat spot, they get cracks in them, and they also are date stamped. Not to mention a lot of other components within. Oil, heating and cooling, if there's a few starts and stops throughout the time, people want to test it, demo it, and it gets parked again. Nobody's doing oil services. You should by rights even be changing the oil every once in a while. So that is clear that lot rot is real, and vehicles that sit longer, older models that haven't been looked at could be impacted by sitting for way too long. So also, thanks Computer Nerd, asked the question that there's a specific Toyota dealer selling RAV4s and offering 5% off of MSRP. And then he also asked, should I be asking for another 2 or 3% off? Well, honestly, Computer Nerd, I'm going to say it's always worth a try. And I've always tried to negotiate a harder deal, cut a harder line. My experience so recently is Toyota's playing a harder game. And the reason I say that is I had that personal experience. If you saw my video this week, me going into the dealer and talking about they had a RAV4 Prime that wasn't necessarily picked up by an owner that was, brought in for. But unfortunately, that RAV4 Prime was going for a premium dollar. They were charging 11 grand over sticker because they threw a little PPF in there. Well, paint protection film's worth $1,000 at best, but they marked it up 11 grand. And the salesperson literally said, good luck. If you don't want it, that's okay. We're not playing games. I'm being totally transparent. If you don't want it, somebody else will. It's a highly sought after vehicle. And I still struggle with that. You got to see that video because that really gets into depth as to kind of why that's happening and how you should avoid that. But realistically, my experience, Toyota doesn't generally load up the lots that heavily. And so because of the lower inventory, they're less likely to be one of the hard negotiators or one of the dealers that are willing to negotiate. In fact, most of the dealers that are more likely to negotiate are probably the brands you don't want. The brands from the Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Chrysler, Stellantis products tend to be on the upper end scale where they have a lot of vehicles on the lot and they sit for a long period of time, 140, 150 days on the lot. Versus vehicles like Toyotas and Hondas are at the bottom end of the spectrum, being probably in that 20, 30 days on the lot. So it's clear to me they'd have less vehicles and they basically sell on demand. You want that vehicle, you got to put down some cash, order it, and wait. And I'm not saying this is right. I always do come in there hard and fast and kind of heavy-handed, and I'm pretty aggressive, if we're being honest, about even trying to negotiate. And I try to chisel off as much as I can. I try to get extras thrown in. I don't mean like extras as in PPF and undercoating junk. I mean, I always try to get to the final deal, get the price, wham, that I'm satisfied. Then I try to come at them with a couple of extras. I don't negotiate that into the deal because that's where you get hosed and they'll blend all that in and they have all their fat and markup in some of these vehicles. But yes, absolutely, I would definitely try throw another 3% at them. I mean, even what is that, a collective total of 8%? Let's call it even 10% off of a price that's $50,000 for an upper end RAV4. That's 5 grand off the sticker. I mean, I'm going to give you a heads up. They probably won't go for it, but you got to grind them. You have to try it. And definitely people that are paying over sticker, and there are people paying well over sticker for primes, as well as some of the other vehicles that are a little more sought after. I can't wait to see what's going on as well. For the 4Runner, when that comes out redesigned, it's likely going to be more of a city dweller. It's likely going to be less off-road prowess. You're now probably going to have a turbo 4, maybe a little hybrid assist. The outgoing, rugged, and rough and tumble V6 that they currently run is going away. And they're going to jack up prices. This is, every time they introduce a new model, that's their sort of check and balance and check stop to say, hey, and prices are getting readjusted. There's no real reason for it, but they do it. So at the end of the day, yes, always negotiate and try to take as much off as you can. And Screwston has a question. What's my predictions for the end of 2024? Well, Screwston, I think what we're going to see is this gradual, slow decline in the market. We're going to see interest rates holding. And even if we lose a couple basis points because the Bank of Canada or, of course, the banks in the U.S. decide to make some adjustments, that, 2 basis points or a 0.25% might not be enough to trigger the market. And what we're going to see is banks are getting tighter, less likely to lend. In a lot of cases, they're not lending to people at all. Subprimes are going to be very hard to hand out, and less people are going to be able to get that mortgage or, even get that loan for their vehicle. What that naturally does is, it becomes more of a scarcity of actual qualified buyers. And what you're going to see is that transition or that transition to a place where a lot of the new vehicles are going to struggle selling, or less and less and less are going to sell. I mean, they're all going to announce record sales. I mean, like GM, Ford, Dodge, Ram, they're all saying, oh, we sold record trucks. That's absolutely ballistic. That's nonsense, because a lot of them are lease vehicles or fleet vehicles. And drive by those lots, you'll see a good majority of them are white trucks ready to go out for some business. Yes, a lot of them are fleets or going to rental companies. And so at the end of the day, don't let the numbers entirely fool you, but realistically, what I do see is truck sales continuously decline. We're seeing EV sales continually decline. I see the likes of Tesla and some of the other, manufacturers starting to sort of readjust and recalibrate their pricing on their EVs. So I see those sliding. And as well, used cars is going to trickle too. Later model, higher price CPOs, which were highly sought after about a year ago, are going to be harder to get because they are used. It's going to be harder to get borrowing on them. A lot of times used cars, banks won't lend for a used car. There's less security in that. Now CPO is a higher, an easier car to get than some corner lot in terms of financing, but CPO warranties often, or CPO type cars or even late model cars that are even in good shape, low miles, well looked after, are going to command a decent dollar, but people aren't buying them because they can't get lending or borrowing dollars for them, and generally are going to sit longer and longer. The vehicles you're probably going to see, well, by the way, coincidentally, those prices will slide there a little bit. What you will start to see, though, of course, are more of those cheap junk beaters. You're probably going to see a stabilization in that market, more in those vehicles becoming popular. Auctions will be hustling a lot of those lower dollar cars. You'll see a lot of people flipping those cars for $5 or $10 grand. Those will be the sweet spot. But those vehicles that are 30, 40,000 for a used vehicle are going to be, the prices are going to continually drop on those, and we're seeing that already. And so by the end of 24, we're going to see much more incentives. We're going to see reductions in some of these prices. And I'd like to think that some brands, even more so the brands that are struggling to sell right now. I mean, we talk about the Volvos, specifically even more the Ram, Stellantis, Jeeps products, and some of those vehicles that aren't selling so well, we're going to likely see them hit more bigger discounts. And we're going to see probably a reset of some Monronis or some stickers, addendums, if you will, stickers to say, look, here's a whole new price. Because we are even seeing some of these manufacturers, setting their new prices for 25. And I really believe there will be some fluidity in that market, and I think we're going to see some recalibration there. So I do expect to see prices to continually, we're going to see this gradual deterioration and weakness in the market, and I think that's just going to mean more options for buyers, but it comes at a cost. So as a buyer, if you have the money in hand, get a higher down payment or deposit, minimize the impact of interest rate charges on your bank account, and as well, just go in there ready to heavy hand these guys, because likely there will be people and OEMs and dealers ready to deal. David Kolb You ask the question, what pickup truck is possibly worth $100,000? And I'm still trying to figure out that myself. You know, it wasn't but a few years ago you can get a brand new Porsche 911 Carrera PDK transmission for about 100 grand starting price. You know, and while some would argue that it's a useless vehicle, not everybody wants a Porsche, I get it. But there is an inherent value and heritage to a vehicle like that and resale that Porsches hold. I mean, you buy a 911 brand new and you spend X amount of dollars, you're going to likely get 3/4 of that value back even after 6 or 7 or 8 years of ownership of that vehicle. They actually hold a pretty strong value. Pickup trucks, they're meant to use and abuse. They're utility vehicles. They're usually exposed to harsh elements. And if you've seen, they're not built of the same quality. Most pickup trucks rust out very soon. Well, Ford's exception, of course, with aluminum body panels. But the Rams are rotted out within 3 or 4 years. You're starting to see rust bubbles pop up, the bottom of the cab, of course, the back end, the back corners or quarter panels. And of course, GM's not much better. And honestly, these trucks, they're not built well. The engines, the V8s are weak. They have catastrophic failures. Transmissions are often problematic. And there's, while a truck is great to have, it's become more of a luxury item. And unfortunately, a lot of people are using that as the clout or the shtick to say, I need a truck rather than, the old days of, getting into a premium car, luxury sedan, maybe this upscale SUV. Now people are making the choice to buy a truck, and that's driving the prices up. Now, unfortunately, people that need them for work, for business, are having to claw and battle with people indirectly for these prices. Because if it weren't for these people utilizing them as a nice to have, driving these prices up, those that actually need them would be able to buy them for a more affordable price. But because it's been driven up to sort of a luxury car segment, and the buyers a lot of times buying them with the sunroof, leather interior, are looking at it like, this is a great all-around, practical, powerful, utilitarian vehicle that has all the luxury amenities you could possibly need or want. I mean, who needs a truck with 22-inch rims? Nobody as far as I know, but they're being sold out there for 100 grand. So sadly, this is what's going on right now. The market is pushing this, but it's the buyers. It's the buyers creating this frenzy. And this is what's caused this whole phenomenon. And as greasy as a lot of these dealers are, they're opportunistic. And they're just looking for this. And they see a gap and they're going to pursue it. And that's what's happening. So no truck's worth 100 grand. In my opinion, the best, most well-decked out truck that's actually reliable, honestly, shouldn't be more than $40,000 or $50,000 in my personal opinion. Maybe a diesel for 60. That's it. Where we were about 6 or 7 years ago, but clearly prices have gone through the roof. And as I mentioned it before, right there, you want to see that Toyota is screwing the customers. How's that going? And I am mad as hell. Hope to see each and every one on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.